un espacio de reflexión sobre la función de la cultura cinematográfica y teatral en la vida contemporánea. Voces Cátedra Ingmar Bergman.
I'm really lucky because I didn't go to film school like you unfortunate people. I've started at the top and start working my way down over the years. I think just as I'm about to die, I'm going to go to film school and learn what it is I was supposed to be doing. I don't want people either to be nervous or insecure or feeling threatened, so I try to involve everybody, even if it's the guy hammering the nails in. I'd like him to read the script. I'd like him to be part of the movie. And that's it. You surround yourself with really good people that you respect their opinion, and then you learn to hate them when you're shooting. Because they're constantly saying, no, you can't do that. And that's the only way I can get through the films, because almost every film I've done is far more ambitious than the budgets we have. And so you've got to allow somebody to organize it, and I'll do my best to ruin his job. But
Terry Gilliam es un director de cine británico nacido en 1940. Fue uno de los miembros del grupo humorístico Monty Python, en el que realizaba animaciones montadas de forma artesanal. Como director ha explorado diferentes terrenos narrativos, como la comedia estrafalaria en Miedo y Asco en Las Vegas, la fantasía oscura en las aventuras del Barón Munchausen, o la ciencia ficción en Brasil. Con esto se ha convertido en un director de culto por su forma de cuestionar los límites de la realidad.
I think it comes from me being a cartoonist, because cartoonists distort things. That's what you do, because in a cartoon you make a head bigger, eyes smaller, whatever it is, to hopefully find a slightly abstracted version of the person or the object, and hopefully be a bit more truthful about who it is, or at least define what it is. I thought wide-angle lenses do something like that, but you've got to be very careful with them, because I don't want to do like in so many films where they just keep doing that to the character and the face distorts. I mean, also I was a huge fan of Citizen Kane and the German Expressionists, which always seemed to distort the world. The world was bending and doing strange things, and I can't seem to get away from that, even if I try. When I look through the camera, and I'm looking, say, at a long lens for me is like a 28 millimeter. It's like, I'm looking. I'm not in it. I'm not seeing the edges. I just see that guy there, and I want to see what's going on there as well as him. And a wide-angle lens does that for me. It's almost like my peripheral vision is being filled in. I hate myself for doing it because it's a much slower way of working. It's harder to light for the cinematographer. Where do you hide the lights? Especially if the camera is moving around the place. With a telephoto lens, a long lens, it's so much easier to work. As I'm getting older, I'm getting lazier, and I'm suddenly going to long lenses like a 40 millimeter. But I mean, there's a 10 mil that's really good now. It's just it doesn't bend. I don't know how that thing. It doesn't banana. It does little things like that, but they stay. But there's something about it. It's just, and I found when and also what it does, I can't do big tight close-ups that other people do. Like I could never be Sergio Leone with the lenses I use, because when you get that close to somebody, it's going to distort the face in a way that I don't want it to be distorted. I don't want to turn the people into grotesques. Except sometimes I do. I think the whole process of filmmaking is continuous. I don't see there's the writing stage. That's where you begin. That's sort of the roadmap. And then you set out when you're shooting, and now it's like, we've got the roadmap, and we're heading towards that beautiful city on the hill. And then you get into the forest before you know it, and the lights go out, and you start, where am I? And you start getting lost when you're shooting. And then you get interested in something off the road. And that's how the shooting goes. And you break your leg, and then but eventually you get to the end. And you still haven't got to the city, though. And then you get to the editing room, and now we've got all these pieces of this puzzle. It's like, to me, a big jigsaw puzzle. And even though it was written for that piece to go there, and that piece to go there, when you start putting it together, I said, oh, well, no, I think that piece might be better here. And so it's always shifting, and I don't know I don't have any theories about it. The editors I tend to work with, which have basically been two principal people, they agree with me. We don't work on any theory. We just work on, is the story being told as well as it can? Are the characters developing as best they can? Are we confusing people? Are we boring people? Can we tighten this up? And it's very pragmatic working it out, but I'm always, in every film I've done, I'm surprised that I've got at least one scene in the wrong position when I wrote it, and it has to be pulled into the right position. And I find the editor ought to get the same credit as the script writer, because we're still writing at that point. And then even things change when the music comes in. To me, the film is never completely written until the last sound effect, last bit of music, and it's over. Even coloring, when you're color correcting a film at the end, I can change the mood of a scene by the color. So that's writing as well. So the film, I begin to think the film is actually writing itself. It's determined to beat up enough human beings along the way to create itself. The film is the God, and it's really unforgiving God, and it's brutal. It drags everybody along until it's done. And when it's finally done, I'm sort of released from bondage. The prison's off, I can go, and I don't have to watch it ever again, or even believe in that God ever again.
Arthur, King of the Britons.
The group worked in a totally democratic way. There were different groups. John Cleese and Graham Chapman wrote together. Michael Palin and Terry Jones wrote together. Eric Idle wrote alone, and I did my things alone. And that's, in a sense, how the working groups divided. And what would happen is everybody would go away at the beginning of a series or in preparation for a series and start writing, write. And then we would get together and start reading out the different sketches. And if everybody seemed to like the sketch, it went in one pile. If there was a mixture, it went in another pile. And if there was just hatred, it went there, the shit pile. And that's how we would do it. And then we would have these different piles. And then when we would have to start preparing a particular show, we would start going through the good stuff and say, well, that relates to this relates to that. Maybe that's a theme that we can start developing. And then, of course, there wasn't enough good material that we all agreed on, so we'd have to start pulling things out of the medium thing and sometimes out of the shit box. And the funny thing is, some of the things that we had very little faith in turned out to be some of the best things occasionally. It's impossible to know what's going to work and what isn't. I was the lucky one in the group because what I did was different from everybody else. So I couldn't actually read anything out during these sessions. I would throw out some hints at what I was trying to do, and that was it. So what would happen is the script would start being written, and this is in there, then another thing. Another thing that would happen sometimes, we would have a sketch that seemed to go well, and then it fell apart. So one of the other groupings would take over that sketch and start writing it to continue it and see what would develop out of that. And then we would start assembling these shows. And whenever the group got to a point where we didn't know what to do, it just said Gilliam takes over and gets us from here to there. That's all. And I had a lot of ideas, some of it based on what the sketches were, some of just ideas that I wanted to incorporate. And I would go away and start doing my animation. And basically I was working alone. If I had one assistant, occasionally I was lucky. And I would start assembling artwork, cutting things together, and then start animating. Well, a lot of the times I wouldn't wait I would do the voices first, because I would go to the others and say this, say that. And then I would start putting that together and animating to that. And then on the day of the show, I would deliver what I did to the surprise of everybody else, and it went. One thing I should say about the shows is they weren't ad-libbed. They were always written and rehearsed. So what you see on the screen, both the films and the television, this was carefully rehearsed. It doesn't look that way, and sometimes clearly the rehearsals were pointless, but that's how it was done. Actually, I'll go back. When I was doing Python, and people thought I had to be on drugs to do the animation, and it's the only way you can do it. But I was working straight through, and there would be 7 days a week, and maybe 2 all-nighters during that time. And all those pieces of paper on my desk at 3 or 4 in the morning start talking to me. They move themselves around. That's what's interesting. I don't touch them. They move into the right places. So you don't need drugs. So I didn't have the money to buy drugs. So I started doing animation. I don't have any sort of organization, nothing. Ideas come to me, and when I'm a bit more focused, I carry a notepad around to write them down. I used to think they would always be there once the idea came out of the heavens and found me. It would stay there forever, and it doesn't work that way. And they float away, so I've got to get them down, nail them down to a piece of paper sometimes. Since I was a child, I just tried to reinvent whatever I saw, just for the fun of it. To me, it's entertaining to change things and to see combinations that make it more interesting. The one thing I don't do much of is watch movies. I really don't watch movies much anymore. I don't watch television either. Maybe that's why I'm not writing very well these days. But I used to go to the National Gallery in London whenever I dried up, and I just walked through 15 minutes from the front door to the back door, and you start dialogues with paintings. It's really easy. You see a painting, you start imagining what went into that little story there, especially whatever it is. And you throw yourself into those worlds that an artist has spent a long time creating a moment, and I want to throw myself into it while I'm there, and then I get out of it. And some of that sticks, some of it doesn't, and in the end, I kind of feel I'm being original. It's only after I've finished a movie and realized I've just copied something else. I find that out later, but I kind of fool myself into thinking I'm being original and I think it's another reason why my encyclopedic knowledge of films is very bad. I think for film students, the more films you see, the harder it is to feel that you're coming up with something new. That's a terrible pressure, because I think you should feel you're coming up with something new. Unfortunately, most successful films out there at the moment are just repeats of something that we've already seen. So don't take my advice. Just watch what movies are successful and copy them. Just change the costumes a bit.
Varias de las películas de Gilliam incluyen argumentos que parecen ocurrir en la imaginación de sus personajes, provocando dudas sobre la identidad y la salud mental. Constantemente protesta contra la burocracia y los regímenes autoritarios, a la par que distingue las distintas clases de la sociedad con su estilo incorrecto e irónico. En sus obras siempre hay una atmósfera oscura con personajes extraños, y sus guiones suelen terminar como tragicomedias.
I always work with somebody else because I just work better as a collaborator rather than sitting down writing on my own. And we used to, Tony Grisoni and I, who did Fear and Loathing in Thailand, and we worked on the computer. We have a day together, and I wave my arms around a lot, he types a lot, and we have something. And then we go our separate ways and start rewriting it, and then we get together again. So that's just how it happens. We keep working on it and getting bored with it. Getting confused by it, thinking we're close enough. And I always get impatient and think, come on, we've got to start moving. Because to me, at least my experience in films is you have to create momentum and keep it going. And sometimes I'll start the momentum of trying to raise the money before we have a script, or even halfway through a script, just to start the process. And then sometimes, we always think we've got the script perfect by the time we start shooting. And then we start doing rehearsals, and then realize, because I always try to get time to rehearse before the big crew is there and all the money is pouring out. And so now the actors are there, and you're reading through it, and that would be better if we do that. So there's adjustments are going on. And then you start shooting. Now, what happens with me when we start shooting, things go wrong. It's just the nature of everything I've ever touched. And it's not my fault. That's the important thing. And it just things, you don't have the money to do what you wanted to do, or the location you wanted is not available, or everything is constantly changing. But the advantage I think I have by being, writer and director, I can make the changes as we're going along. I mean, look in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Terry Jones and I wanted to make a real movie like real movie directors do. And of course, with knights, you need horses. We couldn't afford horses, so.
Whoa now!
It was coconuts. And it's a much funnier and more original film because of that. We were forced out of mediocrity by not having enough money. That's almost my entire career has been that. I've been saved from mediocrity, my own mediocrity, by things going wrong.
Brazil, where hearts were entertaining cheer.
Brazil was really, for me, a big cathartic experience. There was a lot of things in society, with governments, bureaucracies, with just life that was making me angry, and it built up over several years, and I'd been writing and writing, and in the end I had about 96 pages of Brazil. Putting Brazil together, it was just, I just started writing, and then I reached a point where I felt I needed a lot more help, and I got Tom Stoppard, the British playwright, to come in. And Tom took what I had done and reorganized it, just sharpened it, made it so much better than what I was doing. And now we've got this script. Wanted it to take place everywhere in the 20th century, and every time in the 20th century. So I didn't want to do a normal sci-fi film that's based in the future. I wanted it to be this mixture. And I just took all the things that interested me and stuck them in the film. Because I didn't want it to be identified with a world of the future. I wanted it to be now. We're living in a world where we're told all this wonderful technology is going to change our lives, make it easier. In fact, it may make it more complicated. And then you have a bureaucracy like the Ministry of Information. Its job is countering terrorism. So what if there aren't many terrorists and you've got thousands and thousands of bureaucrats working in the ministry? You've got to create terrorists, otherwise you're out of a job. The themes of Brazil, they seem to be even more evident today than they were then. I said a couple of years ago when I was in New York to promote Tideland that I was thinking of taking George W. Bush and Dick Cheney to court for the illegal and unauthorized remake of Brazil. I always think, we're in this room here, and we can't see what's making it work because it's all behind these walls and behind this ceiling. There's wiring and there's plumbing and all this stuff is going on around us, and we don't pay attention to it. So I thought, let's reveal it. Let's show all the guts of the world. And so I started putting ducts everywhere. And then it seems to me if you get something one way from the ducts, other things are going to go back and forth. And it's strangely like now with the internet. We get all this wonderful information, but also people now know where I live. They know my movement all the time with my mobile phone. If somebody wanted to get me, the ducts are not physical now, but they're there. Information is going back and forth. So, and there's a place called Port Talbot in Wales. And it's a town that makes steel. And there's all these conveyor belts in the air taking coal, and the dust is falling down. It's like hell on earth. And the beach is black from all the shit and the dust. And I don't know, I just thought, this is a horrible place to be living, and anybody living and working there, maybe their only moment of trying to escape from it is go at least down to the water. And out there on the other side of that ocean is something. And I just had this person with a radio playing, and then somehow I picked up, and this Latin beat, this romantic thing of a world other than that. The Latin American world was a world of palm trees and tango and samba and romance and everything. Isn't that what it's like? Oh, come on. Don't disappoint me. But that's, as a kid in America, that's I dreamed of. And so Brazil was about escape. So the character of Sam is always trying to escape the world he's living in. And because that song got my attention, I thought that's the one we will use, and that's what we'll call the film. primarily of the fantasy sequences, which they involve a lot of special effects. So you have to storyboard those. You can't get away from it. And I drew those very carefully. Most of the non-fantasy elements, I didn't storyboard. I just do it. Things like that big tracking shot at the beginning with all the clerks working away in the office building. That was an idea I wanted to do very simply based on Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory. That was the first time I was aware of a camera just rushing through people in the trenches, and it's always stuck with me, so I wanted to copy that. So I did it in my version with this very fast track with people moving. But there's an instance on that. What I had drawn was something much more complicated, and all we could do in the end was build one straight path that led to Kurtzman's office. And all the equipment, now what's interesting about the technology of that equipment there, it was an old flour mill, again, disused in London. So all of those, what appear to be desks, are wooden machinery that was used to prepare flour. And we just put paperwork in there and some monitors in there. And that's why it's so strange, because it's not designed, it's found and adapted. We just had this one run, we could only do that. So the trick was to do a tracking shot that is running down the end and making just enough that we could turn a corner and begin to see the next corridor of desks. And so that's what we do. We go whoop, and start across, and then we design it so one of the office boys pushes something across, it wipes and blocks a couple frames. And then we just go back and look at the other way. We did that a couple times, and you've got this very long, complicated track. The same thing that happens later, Sam Lowry comes up to his new office, he gets out of the lift, and he comes to this sort of crossroads of long, strange corridors, and he looks that way, this corridor there, and then he goes like that, and we whip pan, and we whip pan back on the same corridor. And then he goes that way, and we whip pan again, back to the same corridor. We keep coming back to the same corridor. And it really works on many levels. Not only is it the same, there's something almost subconscious. You realize, what is going on here? This is like, you're trapped in this thing that's always the same, no matter where you look. And that whole sequence with him walking with people, all the people, papers going on, it's just one corridor. That's all it is.
Definitely no.
My name's Lowry, Mr. Warren, Sam Lowry.
Ah, Lowry. Yes.
Sister?
No. Cancel that. Okay.
Let's go back to Bruegel and Bosch. I mean, great surrealist painters, and of course, all the modern ones. It was interesting, just last week when I got here to Mexico City, we went and saw the Ernst exhibition. I was just walking past, and there was Max Ernst there. And it was phenomenal to see all of that again, and to walk. What we tried to do, because I don't know how many of you saw it, but it's over now. But it was extraordinary to see all of that just strung along the wall, almost like a piece of film. And we started doing that, rather than spending a long time looking at each one and trying to understand it, which is something that you should probably never quite understand it. We started walking faster, going boom, 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 and suddenly it was quite wonderful. I mean, I'd love to be able to make a film as extraordinary as that, but we could probably never get financing for it. That's the problem with films; they cost a lot of money. There's no way around it. So the trick is to somehow fool people into parting with their money, and then spending it the way you want to spend it.